The fact that Musk owns this major communications platform and Zuckerberg now with his broccoli haircut on the frickin' Joe Rogan Experience, acting like he's a TikToker, they're all genuflecting. They all, I mean, this TikTok ban, if it goes through or if it's sold to somebody that Zuckerberg can work with, Instagram, that's their biggest competitor. Like, there's a lot on the line. And of course, the antitrust lawsuit about their purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp. But the whole salute thing, it's not the number one story in the end. But I do feel like the reaction has been indicative of the immense challenges that we face in this corroded communications environment. This billionaire owns this tech platform, and he scared a lot of outlets out of even talking about the fact that he appeared to allegedly do a Sig Heil at the inauguration. And it doesn't really even matter what the truth is, right? His heart goes out to you, yes. It doesn't matter what the truth is to an extent, because his fans and that alt-right, like almost Gamergate 4chan community that Bannon empowered and saw as the vision for Trump's base, and it's played out. It's what's happened. They're all they're post-truth people. They're postmodernists that believe that you just make your truth by speaking it, and there's no objective truth. That's right. I feel like because our politics are so captured by big money, because people feel like their voice is not heard democratically, and I include Biden in that, by not, stepping aside for a primary, that made people's voices feel like they weren't heard, and he didn't hear them on Gaza either. I feel like Trump's greatest accomplishment is the nihilism that he's engendered, and the fact that there's no objective truth and people don't know how to use their power in our society anymore, democratically or with their voice, because it's so corroded.
And that means that all the old sort of standard values of sorry, the dog is demanding attention.
That's okay.
All the old standard values of humility or shame or empathy or mercy, in the words of the bishop who they were so angry dared to preach this very basic Christian message of Christian tolerance. All those virtues are kind of out the window. It's make the strongest survive, and the biggest liar, and the person who's willing to be the most shameless, and just go out there and get yours. I mean, that's the crypto ethos too, right? It's it's just no holds barred. Might makes right. You see this in foreign affairs as well, with what Israel's been able to get away with over the previous year. And it feels very much like that is the era that we live in. And part of what is so depressing, and, I'm we're going to keep fighting, and you never know where opportunity and hope presents itself. There's always openings that emerge. But part of what is so depressing too is the level of capitulation, the lack of really, the Democratic Party is just so pathetic, right? They're ready to just capitulate and do kinder, gentler fascism by and large. That seems to be the direction that they are going to go in. They're going to sign on to the Lake and Riley Act and swear that they're truly border hawks like Trump, and effectively adopt his worldview, sort of like Clinton adopted Ronald Reagan's worldview and consolidated the neoliberal era. So with some exceptions, I would say AOC has been great, Bernie Sanders has been great. There are some exceptions, but overall, the Democratic Party has not had a credible organized resistance. Obviously, the media organizations are all terrified. CNN is shifting Jim Acosta to the middle of the night or whatever. You had the George Stephanopoulos, ABC settled that big lawsuit. You have Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, that whole situation. You even actually had a story out today. I don't know if you guys saw this. Columbia Journalism Review talked to Paul Krugman. He left the New York Times because he felt like he was being throttled and censored there. Was that part of a pre-Trump capitulation as well? Joe and Mika going down to Mar-a-Lago. So even your liberal style MSNBC resistance is by and large dead and gone. There are so few voices that are out there to really point out what is going on and most importantly, offer an alternative vision, offer a different fork in the road that leads us away from authoritarianism and fascism and constant climate horror and turmoil, that it's difficult to see how we really get it together and really have a sort of forceful resistance against these powers.
You answered some of like what I wanted to talk about at the end here, and like how we push back on this. I think there's a little more time to develop, and obviously like it's bleak. I think it's going to get a little bleaker before it gets a little bit less bleak. And that's what we're really aiming high for less bleakness by over the course of the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about like that, your approach to this. I mean, you bring it up a little bit in terms of like what's going on with the media. There's a lot of these outfits that capitulated. There's, like Bezos with his endorsement. That was the first sign to me. It's not like the Washington Post endorsement was going to make a difference anyways. But the idea that his first reaction is like, okay, we're going to capitulate. We're going to just make it clear. And I think CBS is even also thinking about giving them money from an interview, giving Trump money, defamation money from an interview, because Harris, as the candidate, said something that Trump said was not real.
Oh my God.
And there's no case there, obviously, but they're just like, $13 million or whatever it is. It's just, it's a tribute to Caesar. But
yeah, what was it? Is it Amazon that paid Melania $40 million for her documentary,
right? Everywhere. Yeah. This is coming at a time where, as much local media has been, falling apart for years and disappearing and this and that, we're at the worst ebb of it. Maybe it gets worse from here. How, and you mentioned CNN and MSNBC are about to be spun off by their parent companies. They were playing this in a while. So CNN is not going to have, is going to be, it's like becoming quickly just like an online, is going to end up being like mostly an online thing, maybe 3 or 4 years from now. MSNBC is not going to have the NBC resources anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be a completely different sort of animal in 2 or 3 years. And so this, within this like sort of media environment, right? Like you have a couple of very big shows. How do you guys, and you can address sort of the media environment, but also like are you sitting back and saying, because we're sort of working on this and nibbling around the edges, but as you know, it's very difficult when you're doing a daily show to be able to step back and take a sort of a 6-month, 12-month, whatever look at how are you going about saying like this strain of stuff is the most important, right? Because the naturalized citizen thing, it's hugely important, but it also seems to be blatantly unconstitutional. So it will attract a lot of attention, but may not go anywhere. Meanwhile, Russell Vogt, the least sexiest of cabinet members or Senate confirmees, he may be one of the most important people in the government. I mean, so how do you decide? Like, do you have a formula? What is it? What are you guys doing to sort of assess what's the most important thing to follow when we're getting news like out of a fire hydrant?
Yeah, it's not an easy task on a day-to-day basis as you're trying to plan a show, et cetera. I think probably tying together how so many of these crises are driven by inequality and oligarchy. That way you have a coherent frame that people can really wrap their heads around. It's something people are already deeply, deeply concerned about. I think it's a real Achilles heel for Trump specifically and the Republican Party. I mean, the imagery on Inauguration Day, like, a coherent political movement should be able to really use that over and over again. But he's going to disappoint. Egg prices are already going up. Tariffs are going to spike prices even higher. If you truly have mass deportation, even just the threat of mass deportation is likely to spike food prices higher. They are not going to do anything to deal with the cost of living crisis at all. They're likely to make it much, much worse at the same time as giving tax cuts to the rich. I think hammering home that message around oligarchy and using that as the political framework is probably the best direction to go in. And obviously AI ties into that. The climate crisis ties into that. People's just day-to-day, living and material conditions tie into that. So that's how I'm thinking about it. I mean, I'm trying to be a little more vocal and a little bit more, I guess, maybe aggressive in both my social media and how I approach the breaking points and just the way I'm articulating things in general, because I think that fight is required right now and the stakes are incredibly high. And I've been heartened to see you guys, like your channel's doing great. Kyle's channel is taking off, like David Dole, Mike Figueredo, people who are, have a really great message and are not cowed and are, not afraid and bending the knee, etc. That's been very heartening to me, because I think probably the most important project right now, and this is something I think you guys have long done a great job at, a better one than I have, is taking liberals who are right now disaffected and helping to radicalize them into a true leftist worldview. And there's a lot of liberal disappointment with MSNBC and Washington Post and the Pod Save Bros and the New York Times, and their political leaders have let them down. Like when those base voters were talking about fascism and saw Trump as a fascist threat, they actually meant it. Whereas many of these media figures and outlets were just mouthing the words to garner an audience. And so, even as I am largely quite depressed about the moment that we're in, I do think there is a large opportunity there for channels like yours, and, to the extent I have a voice out there as well, to try to articulate this alternative approach to combating fascism, which of course reaches into our own American history with FDR and the New Deal. And obviously of many people now that Bernie Sanders can never run for president again, being like, oh, it turns out that guy had some good ideas, et cetera. But to me, that's the project that kind of gives me life and keeps me going right now in this moment, which is very grim. And I will say one thing just to put out there on a hopeful note, as I know you guys need to wrap up and move on, but Branko Marcetic had a good column for Jacobin about Trump, yes, he has a lot of power right now, but there are also a lot of weaknesses in the coalition. He did only win by 1.5 points. Like, he's coming into office with what for him is a pretty good approval rating, but historically for presidents, including Joe Biden, is quite a low approval rating. He's a lame duck. And so, this could end up being kind of the peak of his cultural and political power. So that's certainly a possibility as well as things play out. One thing I'll be watching is we mentioned that federal court decision on the birthright citizenship. They immediately smack it down. One thing we'll be looking to too is does he adhere to that? Because since he has immunity, even if it went up to the Supreme Court, it's also possible that he says, you in what army? Right. So those are some of the things that I'll be watching out for too, is how far he's willing to push the bounds of the power that he has.
I mean, I think going into this, they knew they had 2 years. They had 2 years. This Congress, this House, this Senate, that's, maybe they're wrong. They may have 4 years of it, but they go into it with 2 years. So they're going to try and jam everything into this thing. And I think, I hope you're right. I think Trump's political power may be fleeting, but once they get into these, once they destroy the civil service, to rebuild that, and you live down in that area, you're going to start seeing neighbors going I'm out of this business. I'm no longer working at the EPA as a lawyer anymore. I'm going to, they're just, to go in and demoralize, the job of going in and demoralizing an agency has to be, if you are a sadistic and hateful conservative, the funnest thing in the world to do, because you can't fail almost. It's I'm just going in with an iron suit to do demo in this apartment building. And it's maybe I'll do it in an efficient way. Maybe I won't, but some things will. I want to smash that mirror and take a Sawzall to this couch, and that's it. It's going to be ugly, I think.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because then they can turn around. You want to grow the government. Look at how ineffective the government is.
100%.
Yeah, because you stripped it down.
Yep.
So there's nothing left. So of course it can't deliver for people because you destroyed it. You intentionally destroyed it. Avian flu, we didn't even mention that. Another thing is they're, attacking public health agencies and getting ready to install RFK Jr., et cetera. There's a lot to be concerned about there too.
Yep. Well,
on that note,
well, plenty to talk about.
No, but it's important. I think, the fact that you and Kyle are like resisting so aggressively, the disaffected liberal thing too is important, where I want our commentary on our end to be both like intersectional, I think that's and defensive in on every front in terms of not throwing any group over the bus, right? And I think that it's a different throwing every group is being thrown over the bus.
Actually,
yes. And I think that's another thing I'm trying to focus on as well. And we'll see. But I appreciate you coming on today, Krystal. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Sorry, I'm having a coughing moment here. I'm just so overcome with emotion at getting to talk to you guys.
Appreciate
all good.
Appreciate the talk.
Thanks so much.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.